When people hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time, the mind creates discomfort called cognitive dissonance, and it quietly pushes them to resolve that tension. Sometimes that leads to denial, but other times it leads to real attitude change. In this video, we'll explore how cognitive dissonance works in the brain, why it can make people rethink their own beliefs, and how it shows up in everyday decisions, habits, and personal growth. Today we will talk about how to use cognitive dissonance to change anyone's mind. So, before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Cognitive dissonance as an internal conflict engine. Cognitive dissonance is a core psychological mechanism that occurs when a person holds two or more conflicting beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors at the same time. Over time, cognitive dissonance does not remain static. It either resolves through belief adjustment, behavior change, or ongoing rationalization. The most stable long-term resolution usually involves alignment between actions and beliefs. This inconsistency creates a form of mental discomfort that the brain is highly motivated to reduce. The discomfort is not abstract, it is experienced as tension, unease, defensiveness, or internal contradiction. Leon Festinger, who introduced the theory, argued that humans are fundamentally driven not just by logic or reward, but by a need for internal consistency. When inconsistency appears, the brain immediately attempts to restore balance. This is why people often shift beliefs, reinterpret events, or adjust behaviors when contradictions become too noticeable. Cognitive dissonance is not a rare event, it happens daily, in small and large ways, shaping how people think, justify, and evolve their beliefs over time. 2. The brain's preference for coherence over truth. One of the most important discoveries in psychology is that the human brain prioritizes coherence over objective truth. This means that the mind is more concerned with maintaining a consistent internal narrative than always holding the most accurate belief. From a neurological perspective, inconsistency increases cognitive load, which the brain tries to minimize. The prefrontal cortex works to organize information into stable models, while emotional systems react strongly to contradictions that threaten identity or safety. When new information disrupts existing beliefs, the brain experiences prediction error, a mismatch between expectation and reality. Instead of immediately accepting or rejecting new input logically, the mind often seeks the easiest path to restore internal harmony, even if that involves rationalization or reinterpretation of facts. 3. How beliefs begin to shift through behavioral pressure. One of the most well-documented pathways of belief change is behavior-first adjustment. In many cases, people do not change beliefs directly through argument or information alone. Instead, they begin by slightly altering behavior, which then creates internal inconsistency. Over time, repeated behavior that does not fully match existing beliefs creates psychological pressure. The mind then has to resolve this mismatch by adjusting beliefs to align with actions. This is why behavior often becomes a stronger driver of belief change than abstract reasoning. When actions and self-perception diverge repeatedly, the brain gradually shifts identity narratives to restore alignment. This process is subtle, gradual, and often unconscious, but it plays a major role in long-term psychological change. 4. The role of self-justification in belief adjustment. When cognitive dissonance arises, the brain often engages in self-justification. This is the process of creating internal explanations that reduce discomfort without necessarily changing behavior or belief immediately. Self-justification can take many forms: minimizing importance, reframing meaning, or selectively focusing on supportive evidence. While this mechanism protects emotional stability, it also plays a role in belief evolution. Over time, repeated justification can reshape how a person interprets reality. The mind gradually builds a narrative that makes past actions feel consistent with current beliefs. This narrative restructuring is one of the subtle ways belief systems evolve without direct confrontation or conscious decision-making. 5. Emotional resistance. As the first barrier to change, belief systems are not purely logical structures, they are deeply emotional. When cognitive dissonance touches identity, values, or deeply held assumptions, emotional resistance becomes the primary barrier to change. The amygdala and limbic system respond to perceived threats by activating defensive states such as anger, denial, or avoidance. In these moments, logical reasoning becomes secondary to emotional protection. This is why people often reject information that contradicts their identity-based beliefs, even when evidence is strong. Emotional discomfort must be reduced before cognitive flexibility can occur. Without emotional safety, the brain prioritizes defense over reflection, slowing or preventing belief adjustment. 6. Why small inconsistencies are more powerful than big confrontations. Psychological research shows that belief change is more likely to occur through small, repeated inconsistencies than through large, direct contradictions. When inconsistencies are small, the brain can tolerate them without immediate rejection. However, over time, these small mismatches accumulate, increasing internal pressure. The mind eventually becomes forced to resolve the tension by adjusting beliefs or attitudes. Large contradictions, on the other hand, often trigger immediate defense mechanisms such as rejection or rationalization. This is because the emotional cost of accepting a large contradiction is too high at once. Gradual inconsistency allows the brain to adapt slowly, making belief change feel like an internal discovery rather than an external imposition. This leads to a stronger sense of coherence, emotional stability, and psychological clarity. However, if contradictions remain unresolved, they can create ongoing stress or internal tension. This is why self-awareness plays a key role in personal development. It allows individuals to notice inconsistencies before they become deeply embedded patterns. 7. Identity protection and resistance to cognitive dissonance. One of the strongest influences on cognitive dissonance resolution is identity. When beliefs are tied to self-concept such as who I am, what I stand for, or what kind of person I am, any contradiction feels personally threatening. The brain treats identity threats as high-stakes emotional events. As a result, people are more likely to defend identity-linked beliefs even in the presence of conflicting evidence. This defense is not irrational from a psychological standpoint, it is protective. The mind prioritizes psychological stability over change. For belief transformation to occur, the identity structure must remain flexible enough to accommodate new information without triggering strong defensive reactions. 8. How real belief change actually happens. True belief change is rarely immediate or externally imposed. Instead, it emerges through a combination of awareness, emotional readiness, repeated experience, and internal contradiction resolution. Cognitive dissonance acts as a catalyst, not a control mechanism. When individuals repeatedly encounter inconsistencies between their beliefs, actions, and experiences, the brain begins seeking resolution. Over time, the belief system adjusts to reduce internal tension and restore coherence. This process is deeply personal and varies from person to person. What psychology consistently shows is that sustainable belief change happens when individuals feel internally motivated to resolve their own contradictions, rather than when they feel pressured from outside sources. In this way, cognitive dissonance is less about changing others, and more about understanding how the human mind naturally evolves when faced with inconsistency, reflection, and the need for internal harmony. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up, leave a comment, and click the button to subscribe.